Welcome, everyone. We'll get started in just a moment. Hello and welcome. We'll get started in just a moment. Really excited for you all to join us. Welcome to the Gray Decision Intelligence Demand Trends monthly webinar series for community colleges. We're thrilled to have you join us today. My Gray Decision Intelligent colleagues and I are here to answer your questions throughout the session, so feel free to use the Q&A or the chat at the bottom of your screen just to say hi, or if you have any specific questions for us. Today we are diving into academic program evaluation and growth for higher education. Stick around for that second half of our webinar. We've got something truly exciting to share that can give your student success efforts a real edge that includes retention and enrollment. So a quick note on housekeeping. We'll send a link to the slides and the video recording to your email within the next day or so. Now let's get started. Bob, are you ready there?
I'm absolutely ready, but usually you introduce me. So,
No, you need no introduction.
of course, thank you. Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Bob Atkins. I'm the founder here at Gray, and I'm delighted to share with you our latest information on demand for higher education programs for community colleges. In addition, I'll be talking today about some things you can do with AI that we think will be really helpful for your students. Let me get started. Before we dive into the trends, what I'd like to do is just to briefly explain what a program evaluation system is. That's what we do primarily. Then we'll talk through trends in student demand, employment, emerging technologies, and I'll briefly summarize for you. So on the program evaluation side, there are a number of things you have to do to evaluate a program well. The first thing to consider is your mission and whether the program is well aligned with your mission. Ultimately, mission trumps all other factors. If it's important to your mission, you're probably going to want to do it, and vice versa. Another attribute to consider is the academic rigor of the program. Does it meet your standards? Is it training people in an effective way? Are they passing relevant external exams like the NCLEX exam for nurses? Then we get into markets, and you might wonder why we do work on markets and why it's relevant. And the answer is, if there is no market for a program, several bad things happen. First, there are no students in it because there's no student interest. And that is one of the dimensions we think is really important, is there student demand for a program. Second thing that happens is there are no jobs for your graduates, because another critical dimension of markets is the availability of jobs. And the third bad thing that can happen to you if you don't evaluate markets is that there's very intense competition, and you can, in fact, win your fair share. And so again, you end up with under-enrolled classes. And that all can lead you into a question about margins. If a market's healthy, usually the margins will be good. There'll be lots of student demand, there'll be jobs for your grads, things can go well. Now you might ask, well, wait a second here, we're not a for-profit organization. And so why do I care about margins and profitability? Most of you are acutely aware of this issue these days. And part of it is that the state is after you, trying to find out what your costs and margins may be, and to trim away programs that they, often using margins as an excuse, believe are unnecessary or inappropriate. In our view, margins are a way of funding mission. And importantly, margins also fund the programs that can't stand on their own 2 feet financially. So a large high margin program can subsidize a small program that may lose money, but is critical to your mission. And that's absolutely appropriate in higher ed. Now that we sort of have a scan of what data might be needed, the next question is, how do you make good decisions with that data? And the answer is, you've got to run a rigorous process and an inclusive process that engages the right people, gives them the right information, and facilitates time spent together to evaluate those programs and reach a common judgment on which programs to start, stop, or grow. And that's very doable. We run 2-day workshops where during that time, the faculty and administration get together and have an open discussion about which programs to start, stop, or grow using detailed data, kind of which I'll share with you today. And having the data really takes a lot of the emotion out of it. It can be a very objective and very rewarding process. And remember, during that process and in your work with Gray, we're not here to help people cut programs. Yes, sometimes programs get cut in this process, but we've run the numbers. There isn't a lot of money to be saved by cutting programs. In most cases, you'll find that if you cut programs, you'll actually end up worse off financially than you were before. And I could, anytime anybody wants to, I'm happy to walk you through the numbers to show you that. But it's most small programs, briefly, don't consume very many resources, but they do have students. And so when you cut them, you lose the student revenue, and you don't save very much money. So it's quite easy to find examples of small programs that, if cut, would actually leave you worse off than you were before. So the real money here, the advantage that you can gain, is finding new programs to launch and existing programs that have room to grow. Those things can transform your financials. We have lots of examples of schools that have done just that, added millions to their top line. And if you need to cut expenses, the place to look is in sections and courses, and find the under-enrolled courses and sections and begin to trim those back. That's where you'll find the cost. But even then, honestly, the revenue opportunities are typically much greater than the cost savings. But you may need those cost savings in order to fund revenue growth. So what I'm getting to is that this isn't really a one-time process. You need to look at these things on an ongoing basis to find these opportunities for growth and for cost reduction. And that's, in many schools, kind of a missing process. How do I manage programs? How often do I review programs? And in this case, remember that when I talk about managing programs, I'm not really talking about the classic process of assessment. And I recognize this as a distinction that I'm going to make, but isn't a general distinction out there in the world. What we help schools do is evaluate whether that program should exist or not. Really, is it start, stop, or grow? That's very different than the assessments that you all need to do to determine whether you're teaching effectively or you're teaching the right material. That's a very important process, but it's not the same process as evaluation and doesn't use the same tools. You can bring them together. That's not a problem. But you do need to manage the economics of your program on an ongoing basis to make sure the school stays financially healthy. And we're helping schools learn how to do that, and installing processes where we automate a lot of the tedious and expensive data collection so that people can review their programs more frequently and manage them more effectively. So let's take a look at student demand. Here we start with the new data. Let me explain for a moment how to read the chart. The dark bars are 2023, and this is monthly data. What you see here is, the dark bar is the lowest bar. That's a good thing, because that means we had more Google searches in 2024. That's the mid blue line. And then finally, we can see that it's actually up in 2025. That's the light blue line. And many of our charts use this format. And what you're really hoping for in most of our material, with one exception I'll speak to in a minute, is to see the more recent years above the prior years. That means it's growing. So in this case, Google search volume is up 25% year over year in the month of April. You can see it was up very substantially in March as well, and has been rising. If I remember this data back, it's been rising for quite some time now, almost 2 full years since we had a decline. So it's boding well for enrollment in higher ed. So despite all the stuff you hear out there about cliffs and students not interested in going to college and so forth, enrollment, I think, is actually going to go up. And we can, again, anybody who'd like to talk about that more, I'd be delighted. I don't think it's a sure thing by a long shot, but there are reasons why I think enrollment probably will go up, despite a decline in the number of people who are becoming college age. So one of these charts that's an exception I mentioned is cost per click. In this case, we really don't want to see it going up. It is up slightly, 3%, but it's been fairly steady around $14 a click for some time now. And just a word to the wise, a click is not a student. To get from a click to a student, generally speaking, you're going to need at least 100 clicks, and often quite a lot more. So this $14 quickly turns into $1,400 per student. So it's a good indicator of competition, and it also suggests that acquiring a student using cost per click advertising is going to be pretty darn expensive. And we look at let's shift and talk about volumes by program. And what we are looking at here is programs with the fastest growing Google search volume across both associate and certificate programs. And healthcare is just dominating this list right now. That hasn't been the case recently, but it used to be, and it's bounced back. So on the health-related side, we have 7 programs that are amongst the fastest growing in Google search: diagnostic medical sonography, medical billing and coding, medical clinical assistant, phlebotomy, public health, nursing assistant, and licensed practical or vocational nurse. Only 2 business programs made the list: business administration and management, general, and accounting. That's pretty unusual. This used to be a lot more about tech and business than it is right now. Education did well, made the list, but it's the only education program that made the list. And again, often there are several different varieties of education that might make this list. When we switch and look at cost per click, now we're looking at things that can get pretty darn expensive. Medical billing and coding, $43 to get someone to click on that. $42 if they click on social work, and $34 in healthcare. So these very high volume healthcare programs are very expensive to recruit for, at least in using Google. Engineering made the list with 1 entry here: electrical and computer engineering. Then we have 3 education programs: online educator at $34 a click, school counseling at $31, and middle school education and teaching at almost $32 a click. Then, so again, very high cost for these. The highest cost of all programs, you're looking at upwards of $4,000 a student for medical billing and coding. The good news, as Google search volume is predicted, we've got an increase. In fall 2018 to 2024, we had that decline. We all remember it was very painful, and actually started many years before this, as enrollment in community colleges declined. That's finally changed, actually around 21, 22 after it began to bounce back from COVID. But that growth has continued and has strengthened even in the last couple of years. And in 2024, fall was actually up 5%. When we look at total enrollment and that's certificate enrollment, we look at total enrollment at the associate level, it too has bounced back. It took a little longer to reverse the trend, but it's up a good solid 3% in 2024 in the fall. So I would say when we look at it, that Google is indicating it will be up in the future, and the enrollment trends show that it's going up now. So I think we can be optimistic about what's going to happen moving forward in terms of enrollment. What did they enroll in is a good question. And what we find here is that there are a couple of things that are just in the other category, one of which is the biggest program in the United States, which is general studies. And largely speaking, these are folks that are going to go on to major in something else in a 4-year college. Business administration, in this case, is also in that other category. This is one that can often be in the top 1 or 2, drop back a little bit. And then we have health, and LPN is number 2. Medical clinical assistant has made our list with over 30,000 enrollments. And finally, EMT paramedic had over 20,000. And in that mix, we have a very strong assortment of trades programs. 5 out of our top 10 programs in terms of enrollment are trades: welding tech with almost 40,000, electrician, 24,500 students enrolled, auto mechanics, over 22,000, bookkeeping and accounting tech over 21,000, and HVAC maintenance tech over 20,000. So some very healthy enrollment trends in the trades and also in healthcare. What's growing? Actually, very similar. We've got 4 trades that made our top 10: welding tech, electrician, here's a new one, auto body tech, and auto mechanic tech, all made the top 10. And these are up there with over 6,000 new enrolls each. Then we have health programs. 3 made the top 10. Health information medical records tech, 5,500. A licensed practical vocational nurse, almost the same, 5,457. And then finally, medical billing and coding with over 4,000 students, incremental students enrolled over this 5-year period. What else is out there? Infotech grew by almost 6,000 students. Cybersecurity up 5,000, a little over, and business administration and management up 4,400. Now, as we switch to the associate level, we get a very different answer. General studies leads our list. Again, probably transfer students by and large. Then we have business administration and management. As I mentioned to you, that's normally up at the top, and here it is holding its own at number 2. Registered nursing just behind that with almost 320,000 students. And then we really switch over to some STEM programs: computer science, biology, engineering general, and economics. Each of those increased by over 70,000, had over 70,000 people enroll in them in the fall. And we do have some trades here, but not nearly as much at the associate level, and that's not surprising. You don't usually see too many trades taught at the associate level, but there are a few. Registered nursing is certainly one of them and is the biggest. Second, we have health services, allied health with almost 100,000, and psychology with 98,000, almost 99,000 students enrolled. And we did have a trade creep onto the list. Bookkeeping and accounting tech, we classify there, and it had over 61,000 students enrolled in fall 2024. Sorry, Mike. All right, so let's take a look at the 5-year growth rates. Now we're at the associate level, and that's between 2019 and 2024. And health dominates this list. 5 out of our top 10 are health, allied health, rad tech, diagnostic medical sonography, community health preventative medicine, and surge tech, all in our top 10. So healthcare did very well over this 5-year period. Then we have a few STEM programs, cybersecurity, which I threw into STEM, computer science, data analytics, and economics. I'm assuming that this is the more quantitative side of economics that is STEM qualified. And then finally, we have one entry here that I put in other, which is anthropology. I'm going to switch gears now, and let's take a look at employment and what the current indicators are in the job market. What's hot, what's not, where are there going to be good spots for your grads? Overall, and by the way, it's very much a yin and yang for community colleges here. We did have a decline in job postings. That's the first decline I can remember since COVID. So this is a worrisome trend for the economy. That is not a worrisome trend by and large for all of you. In our analysis, what we do find predicts enrollment is employment. And when the unemployment rate goes up, enrollment in colleges goes up. So as we see a weakness in the labor market, that is very likely to contribute to an increase in enrollment. As all of you know, when people can't get jobs, a lot of them go back to school. So this is in a way a good indicator for you. It may be troublesome for your graduates. What are the fastest growing areas? And now we're looking at volume of growth. So when we look at retail, that is the largest employment sector in the United States. So it's not surprising to find it represented here in jobs by industry. And these are jobs for which you need an associate's degree or less. So department, clothing and shoe stores, 12,000 more or less job postings. We look down, we've got another retail and grocery, catering and food service, and that's it for retail. Then we have preschools, banking and lending, catering. Well, I did that general merchandise. I should pick that up as retail. Business consulting is a bit of a surprise to me. Accounting and tax, it's getting to be that, we just go through that time of year, but it's a little bit back to April. So still substantial growth there. And insurance carriers and colleges bring up the bottom of the list. But I'm quite impressed that colleges are still able to hire. With all the news, I would not have expected that to be the case in April. Now, if we look at associate and below in terms of job postings, we've got several business categories, retail, general and operations managers, computer support specialists, all well above 25,000 job postings, administrative assistants and customer service reps, both around 20,000, and finally stockers and order fillers at 14,000. Health made the list with 3 entries: registered nursing, nursing assistants, and health and personal care aides. And this number for registered nursing is a pretty intriguing number, actually. First of all, there are a ton of jobs for registered nurses. Second, there aren't enough registered nurses to fill those jobs, and that's been true for some time. There are about 3 job postings per nurse out there right now. So it's one of the highest ratios of jobs per graduate of any program we track. All sorts of reasons for that, not much of which have to do with people wanting to become nurses. Many people do want to become nurses, but we have a lot of constraints in our ability to teach them. Some of them are accreditation issues, others are ability to get clinical slots, and probably a great many others as well. It's an expensive program to set up and teach. So there's, I think, actually still a big opportunity to train nurses. And the other thing to keep in mind is nurses will travel. So if you were able to get additional seats, you could attract students from your local area. You could probably attract students from your state. And it wouldn't surprise me if you had a good RN program, if you could actually attract students from around the country who can't get into a school near them. So as we look at the associate and certificate level, retail leads the list in terms of fastest growing. We have a payroll and timekeeping clerks in the business category, network and computer system administrators, and training and development specialists, all roughly speaking business-oriented fields. Then on the health side, we only have a couple or 3 here: rad tech, psychiatric tech, and registered nursing. So relatively small number of jobs, job growth in in the certificate and associate level for healthcare. And then we have a couple of others, software developers and coaches and and elementary school teachers, all made our list in terms of fastest growing job posting volume. Which skills do people want? Well, let me go a little bit off piste here. I looked through the data on the fastest growing skills in that came out of the labor market data that the federal government publishes. And one thing that struck me is if you go down those skills that are frequently required and so forth, Microsoft Office dominates the list across all sorts of job categories, whether that's CEO, finance, even nursing. So if you're not equipping your students with very strong Microsoft Office, that's PowerPoint, Word, and Excel, you're really doing them a disservice. It's a critical skill really across the board in the job market. So that may not be obvious for healthcare, for example, but it's really important. And nurses are going to have to do things in Excel. They'll have to use Word. They'll have to use PowerPoint in the course of their career. So helping them solidify those skills is really important. And that's not just taking a course in Office. It's really using, I think, Office and other tools like that, well, primarily Office, on a day-to-day basis in whatever course they're in. In English, that might be using Word to write, or maybe PowerPoint. In other courses, you may be using the analytical tools. So what are showing up right now in terms of growth? Merchandising, loss prevention. We have banking as a skill, behavioral health, mental health, so a couple of healthcare things here. Operational excellence, LinkedIn, interesting work skill there. I would not have expected to see that. Operational efficiency, automation, and special ed. So we're seeing a little bit of an operations focus here that I wouldn't have expected, with efficiency, automation, and operational excellence, all being fairly similar kinds of skills. And then again, we see retail, whether that's merchandising and retail banking, I suspect is what this is, cropping up as well. Not as much healthcare in terms of skills as I would have expected in these fastest growing skill categories. Part of the reason may be that they're so large that the growth has already taken place in many of these fields in healthcare. Now, as you think about the data that you use to pick programs and the data you may be using to guide students into particular fields, please be careful. One of the problems is that the typical data provided by traditional labor market data firms and by actually the federal government in the Center for Education Statistics is very misleading. So the NCS publishes a crosswalk. This is an excerpt from that crosswalk. And the premise of the crosswalk is that people go into the fields for which they're directly prepared. So the simplest example is a healthcare social worker, in this case, would become, somebody who studies social work would become a healthcare social worker. Logical, makes sense. And when you do the work that way, when you do the crosswalk that way, what you find is that for public health in particular, that there are 4 occupations that line up with that when you take that particular point of view of directly preparing somebody for the job. And those 4 occupations, as I mentioned, one is healthcare social worker, medical health services managers, health education specialists, and community health workers. So not a lot of opportunities for people who graduate in public health, or so one might think, if you use the NCS crosswalk. And remember that on the page that publishes that crosswalk, it says, this crosswalk is not based on empirical data. Well, what if you did look at empirical data to figure out what people do with a public health degree? The answer is they do many, many things. 709 occupations, not 4. So that 4 is off by a multiple of over 150. That's not good. If we're off by 5% in the kind of work we do, not a big deal. But when I have to multiply by 150 to get the right answer, that is a big deal. It means the data is completely wrong. And remember, this underpins many of the data sets that you get from folks, because they start with the NCS crosswalk. They may embellish it a little bit, but when we've looked at other labor market data, even AI picks up that NCS crosswalk and gives people a very limited sense of what they can do with the degree. So we've got 11,000 folks from public health that were public health graduates, and we looked at what they did. We've also cross-checked this against the the community survey from the American Community Survey from the census, the US Census. And, it gives us the same kind of answer, which is people go into hundreds of occupations, not 4 or 5. And in this case, for public health, you can see number 1 is general and operations managers. And let's just go back. That's not even on the list here. And it's the number 1 thing people do with this degree. When you think about it, that actually makes sense because they're probably going into managerial careers in healthcare. Computer user support, I would categorize that as random. But there are other things on here that are basically business kinds of employment. And they've gone through public health, but they've also prepared themselves to do a variety of other things, and they have other interests. So that's, the reality of what people do doesn't line up at all with what traditional labor market databases would say that they do. One other point on this, when you think about educating someone in a public health degree, it's worth pausing and looking at this list and saying, oh, what skills do I need to give them in order to go into the diverse set of occupations they're really going to do? So, it's pretty clear to me that you want to have strong technical skills, computer skills, because 2 of mine here are directly computer-related skills. Management as a skill, also going to be important. A little bit of sales. And I put this back in management. You need to know how to do financial work. And here's auditors and accountants again on the accountants on the financial side. So you need to be thinking about not just the things that they need to learn in public health per se, but also the other skills they may need to develop in order to be successful in the careers that they're going to go into after college. Now let's get to the fun part. We mentioned that there's some applications of AI that can help you all in higher ed, and particularly help your students to be successful through school. So let me go to a couple of those things. First, are AI skills going to be an important thing to teach? And these are low volumes. I mean, we're still talking about a few thousand, but this is for one keyword on natural language processing, or NLP, and it's up 90% year over year. So we picked a couple of these there that represent AI because the skills don't come through as AI per se. They come through as all the ingredients that go into AI, like natural language processing. Again, very rapid growth here. We look at words like agentic. This agentic represents AI software agents that can go off and do things for you on any sort of web-attached device or service. So they can book an airline reservation independently without your having to give them much of any instruction. What we see here is actually 100% compound growth month over month, not year over year. From month to month, this is growing 100%. So this whole business of giving people skills to know how to build agents, software agents, very much a burgeoning field. And by the way, this is a skill you could learn easily in a community college. It doesn't require super sophisticated computer science skills to build agents. The tools that have been developed to support agents are trying to be accessible to people who don't code. So I haven't checked it myself. When it comes to people who are not technical, I use myself as a benchmark. If I can do it, anybody can do it. I haven't tried that yet, so I don't know if I can build an agent. But in watching Google and others, they really are trying to make these things that ordinary people can use. And that suggests that you can teach this, and people at the associate and certificate level should be interested and able to develop skills in software agents. Now, there's another way that AI can help you in student success, and that is to actually give you a computerized tutor. And let me show you an example of what an AI companion, in this case, we're calling our service College Companion, and there'll be several of them, and this is the tutor.
The class today talked a lot about carburetors, but I'm really not 100% clear on what a carburetor is and what it does. I think this is what this is, right?
Okay, I see that you've shared a slide titled Clear Carburetor Teardown/Discussion with an image of a carburetor. A carburetor is a device in an internal combustion engine that mixes air and fuel to create a combustible mixture. Is there anything specific about the carburetor that you'd like to discuss?
Well, my professor gave me this slide right here that has some lines pointing to specific parts of the carburetor, but I don't really know what they do or what they mean. Can you describe what these are simply to me?
Certainly, I can describe those parts. In the image you've shared, there are labels pointing to idle air bleed, high speed air bleed, and bowl vent. An air bleed is a small hole that introduces air into the fuel stream to help atomize the fuel for proper combustion. The idle air bleed is responsible for the air fuel mixture when the engine is idling. The high speed air bleed works with the main jet to regulate the air fuel mix when the engine is running at higher speeds. The bowl vent is a hole that allows air pressure in the fuel bowl to equalize with the outside pressure. Does that make sense so far?
It's really confusing. Can you explain it super simply?
Okay, let's try simplifying it further. Think of a carburetor like a kitchen sink with different faucets. The idle air bleed is like a tiny faucet that lets a little air into the fuel mixture when the engine is at a slow pace. The high speed air bleed is like another faucet that mixes air into the fuel when the engine goes fast. And the bowl vent is like a tiny breather that lets the air move around to keep everything balanced. Is this clearer?
All right, so that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm glad I could help clarify. Is there anything else you'd like to discuss or any other slides or videos you'd like to share?
Actually, there was a video that I had about car mechanics and repair, and I was wondering if you could help me understand what's going on in the video.
Sure, I can help you with that. Do you have any specific questions about the car mechanic video?
Well, I have it up right here, but I don't understand what is going on with this part of the car. I was wondering if you could help me.
Okay, I can certainly try to help. The video you're showing is about a Holley 1850 carburetor. Is there anything specific about the video that you would like me to explain?
Well, what is the person doing in this video right now?
In the video, the person is using a flathead screwdriver to adjust the idle mixture screw on the Holley 1850 carburetor. They are turning the screw to fine-tune the fuel-air mixture at idle speed. Would you like more information about this process?
Yeah, can you tell me more about it? Because I need to know this for my class tomorrow.
Certainly, let me elaborate on the idle mixture screw. It controls the amount of fuel that's mixed with air at idle. The screw is turned clockwise to lean out the mixture by reducing the fuel, and counterclockwise to richen the mixture by adding more fuel. Is there anything else you need explained for your class?
Do you see this liquid that's coming out? What is that?
Yes, I do see the liquid. Based on the context of the video, it appears to be gasoline leaking from the carburetor. It's not unusual for a small amount of fuel to leak out when working on a carburetor. However, a large leak should be addressed. Is there anything else I can help you with?
I'm going to skip over. It goes on. I honestly couldn't believe that an AI could do this, watching a single video for the first time and be able to explain what's happening on it. I think it's very promising in terms of what AI can do to help a student at midnight when they have questions and there's no one around to answer them for them. Should also help them understand the material and be successful in their classes. So I think it's a tremendous opportunity for everyone to give students the support that they need without breaking the bank. So let's take a look at a different one. Another area that's often short-staffed in higher ed is career services. So what we've done is created an AI application that can help students throughout their career search, whether they can chat, the AI will learn about them and what their interests are and how they're doing in school. We will, as this develops, we'll be loading their transcript into the AI so that it knows how they've done by course, and it can talk to them about what they care about and remember who they are, so that as it suggests jobs, the jobs align with what they've studied as well as what they're interested in. So let me show you what this looks like in practice, and I'm going to jump ahead slightly to. Well, maybe I'm not going to jump ahead here, actually.
Can we do a mock interview?
Hey there, I am Career Companion. How are you doing today? I am excited to help you with a mock interview. Also, great news. You've just unlocked a new feature from completing your tasks mock interviews. Let's dive right in. To start, tell me a bit about the kind of job you're preparing for. What role and industry are we simulating?
The role we're simulating is a data science role involved with pollution.
Okay, a data science role involved with pollution. Got it. Let's get started. Tell me about a time you had to work with a large data set to solve a problem. What steps did you take and what was the outcome?
So one example of a time I used data science to solve a problem was with my thesis that I just completed on people falling in love with robots. It used a quantitative analysis of people's interviews to figure out how people were feeling about the robots.
That's interesting. Using quantitative analysis to understand people's feelings about robots is definitely a unique application of data science. Feedback when answering behavioral questions like this, it's helpful to use the STAR method: situation, task, action, result. Briefly describe the situation, explain the task you were assigned, detail the actions you took, and highlight the results you achieved. This structure makes your answer clear and easy to follow.
So the example goes on through other dimensions of an interview, but you can begin to see the kinds of support that it can provide in guiding the student to give the content that an interview is looking for, an interviewer is looking for in a very well-structured way. We are actually in the course of enhancing this. We'll have something that can ingest the video of the student and really give them more detailed coaching on their appearance and other aspects of being successful in a job interview. So that's all coming your way in what we are going to call College Companion, and then careers or tutors or whatever that particular companion is designed to do. I expect over time we'll probably have 8 to 10 of these. We're going to market with at least 3. One is careers, one is tutor, and the other is communication. And as I think about jobs for students, developing that communication skill is really important. It's often the most criticized element of a new graduate. They don't know how to effectively communicate in the workplace. So I think we'll have a tool for you that can really help with that.
Hello, can we do?
So let me summarize for you. In April, Google searches for academic programs rose 25% year over year. So we have reason to be optimistic about growth in enrollment. Ultrasound led the list with 340,000 searches year over year. Average cost per click rose 3%. Not so great. It's getting more competitive out there. Job postings fell 7%. As I mentioned to you, that's not necessarily bad. It'll be tough for your graduates, but it should be good for enrollment. In fall 2024, enrollment increased at the certificate level by 5% and the associate level by 3%. From fall 2019 to 2024, welding tech grew by over 8,000 students. In the same period, allied health grew by almost 40,000 students at the associate level. The employer demand is growing in both clothing and retail. And a retail salesperson, not surprising, had the highest volume of job postings because it's the largest field of employment in the United States. Associate and public health grads go into 709 occupations, not 4. So be careful with that data out there, guys. Most of your data is going to tell you that there are only 4 to 10 fields that your graduates can go into, and that's just not true. New AI skills are emerging as we speak. As we showed with Agentic growing 100% a month, they're coming on fast, and we'll need to keep track of them and prepare students with these skills so that they arrive in the marketplace with the tools that people are looking for when they get there. And I believe that all sorts of new tools are going to be created for higher ed. We're certainly working on our own, but I'm sure there are others out there that can be very helpful to you and your students, whether that's helping you to do your job without having to stay up all night, handling administrative tasks, or helping your students at midnight when they've got a question. These tools are going to be there, and the quality of them is going to start out good and only get better. So that's our wrap for today. If you have any questions, please feel free, and I'd be glad to answer them. You want to post them over in the Q&A or in the chat. Either one works. All right. If there are no questions, why don't we call it a day today? Please do answer the poll, and we're delighted to hear your thoughts on how we did. And if you have any suggestions of how we can do better, or you'd like to follow up with me, you're welcome to do that. My email address is bob.atkins@graydi.us. So that's bob.atkins@graydi.us. Thank you all very much.